Hey there everybody, before the video begins I just want to talk about something real quick. A few days ago I made a post here on YouTube and said I would discuss the contents of the post before talking about Code Geass. I just want everyone to know that I stand by everything that I said in that post. I was very upset when I made it. I made it only a few hours after Alex Preddy was murdered by ICE agents in the streets of Minneapolis, and I can say that I'm still pretty fucking mad about it right now. Not as mad as this guy was when he responded to it, but that's beside the point. I just want to reiterate that I think the things that ICE in particular are doing are disgusting, illegal, and immoral. I think that they are literally murdering American citizens in the streets, as they have done with the two high-profile killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Not to mention the multiple people just this year that have already died in ICE detainment facilities. And ultimately, I think that my community has also spoken with the reaction to that post. If you support the things that ICE is currently doing, we don't want you here. This community is not a safe space for those who will applaud the abhorrent behavior, the murderous behavior of ICE thugs across the country. Personally, I thought about making a little intro to a video like this when Renee Good was murdered, but I didn't, and I regret that. And now that I've seen the multiple videos of Alex Preddy being shot 10 times in the back, after having been disarmed from a weapon that he is legally allowed to carry and is his right as an American citizen, I just wanted to reiterate it. It's fucking bullshit, and I won't be putting up with any of that shit on this channel, just so you know. Oh yeah, and also before the video starts, I just want to say, fuck you, Stephen Miller, you egg-headed, sunken-eyed motherfucking cunt. Hey there everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about an incredibly popular mid-2000s anime, Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. Code Geass began airing in 2006, which it's kind of crazy that as of this video it's almost 20 years old. It tells the story of an estranged prince and his desire to get revenge no matter the cost. How that desire twists people to use others as tools, and if the ends truly justify the means. But it also weaves a tale of fighting for what you believe in, standing up to oppression, individuality, and sacrifice. And Pizza Hut product placement. Code Geass is full of characters with opposing philosophies duking it out in none other than giant mecha called nightmare frames. While the characters portrayed can commit some truly heinous acts, it's hard to call them really truly good or evil. A lot of them exist within a shade of gray. Well, there are some characters that are just straight up fucking evil, but we'll get there. Code Geass was directed by Sunrise's Goro Taniguchi, the man behind Gun Sword, which I covered a little while ago. He was also an episode director and storyboard artist on a personal favorite of mine, Mobile Fighter G Gundam. The series was written by Ichiro Okouchi, known for the screenplay of Turn A Gundam and Eureka 7. And of course, we cannot talk about Code Geass without mentioning that the character designs were done by the all-female manga supergroup Clamp, if you couldn't tell by the lanky sad boy designs. I kid. Clamp has a very unique style, and I have to say I've never seen an anime that they've been involved with that I didn't like. This video will be going over the plot and characters of Season 1, and next month we will talk about Season 2. There's also an OVA that takes place between both seasons called Akito the Exiled, and I may take a look at that sometime in the future. Also, just a heads up, I did watch the English dub of Season 1, and while there are some characters that are hit or miss, it's entirely serviceable for 2006. Mostly, I watched the dub because I've been working my way through Bleach for the last, 9 months, so I was interested to hear Lelouch being voiced by Johnny Young Bosch. Code Geass follows the Prince in Hiding, Lelouch v. Britannia, as he searches for information on his mother's murder while also starting a revolution in a colonized Japan known as Area 11. Lelouch originally hails from Britannia, a militaristic empire that takes the concept of manifest destiny as a personal challenge. While the name suggests that it would be based on the British Empire, it's actually an amalgamation of the UK and United States, in a world where the American Revolution failed and the New World became a seat of imperial power. Code Geass's alternative history is pretty interesting, though you'll have to take a look at supplemental materials outside of Season 1 to get a lot of that info. Acting as a foil to Lelouch is his childhood friend, Suzaku Kururugi, the son of Japan's former prime minister, who harbors a dark secret that sets him on a path of self-loathing and subservience. Both Lelouch and Suzaku's will, ideals, and friendship are tested with the rise of a mysterious masked revolutionary who goes only by the name Zero. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Let's take a look at Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. The show opens by introducing us to Lelouch Lamperouge, a student at the prestigious Ashford Academy who shows off how big of a brain he has by beating haughty nobles at games of chess between classes with his friend Rivel. Lelouch really does not like the ruling noble class, and the show really doesn't take long to show the audience why, as we're also introduced to the ruling viceroy of Area 11, Prince Clovis. Clovis gives a heartfelt speech addressing his audience after a terrorist bombing. Clovis is literally giving his address in the middle of a high society party, and of course the man is just acting. He then dispatches a squad of the series Mecha, humanoid walking battle tanks called Nightmare Frames, to engage terrorists who have stolen a truck full of medical supplies. Overall, the Nightmares are pretty cool. The show doesn't really focus on them as much as a Gundam series would, and a lot of the more granular aspects of the mechs are just explained by technobabble. There are a good variety of mecha, both mass-produced models and of course experimental prototypes that are immensely powerful. Most of the mass-produced mecha that we see, like the Glasgow and Burai, carry practical weaponry like rifles and missile launchers, but it isn't out of the question to see important characters also carry melee weapons like big-ass swords. And we all know I love when a mech has a big fucking sword. Then of course the series prototype mecha like the Lancelot and Gawain are equipped with experimental weaponry and defensive countermeasures like the Hadron Cannon and energy shields. Overall, the designs are really fun, with the style of mech varying by which faction deploys them. Usually Britannian mechs look like knights with swords and capes, while other groups have a more tactical and real-world look to them. One last little tidbit about the Nightmares that I didn't even notice until I found it on the wiki. They're called Nightmares not only to stoke fear in the hearts of their enemies, but also because the Britannians send actual knights out in them, so therefore the mech is the knight's mare. I thought that was cute. Lelouch gets wrapped up with the terrorists when he and Rivel see the stolen truck crash on the way home. Lelouch goes to help the people in the truck, but gets stuck inside as it drives away, and eventually gets stuck in a subway tunnel. He tries to escape, but is attacked by a lone Britannian soldier. As Lelouch tries to explain that he isn't a terrorist and was just trying to help the people in the truck, the soldier takes his helmet off and reveals that he's actually Lelouch's childhood friend, Suzaku Kururugi. There's a big canister in the back of the truck that the audience believes is full of an experimental poison gas, but it opens and we see that inside is a mysterious green-haired woman. As the two are amazed by what they see, Suzaku's commander appears and orders him to shoot Lelouch, but he refuses and is shot in the back. Lelouch and the girl escape but are tracked down. She jumps right in front of a bullet and is shot right in the forehead to defend Lelouch. Even though she appears dead, she grabs Lelouch and he hears her voice inside his head, proposing a deal to him. She will grant him power in return for making her wish come true, a wish that is kept in the dark until later. Lelouch accepts and is granted the power of Geass, specifically the power to compel any person to follow his orders. Lelouch uses his newfound ability to have his would-be firing squad kill themselves, which they are all happy to do for him. At first, Lelouch appears shocked by what he's able to do, but he realizes what this power could mean for him, and he gives the audience his best slasher smile. And a new demon is born, setting the stage for the rest of the series. As far as first episodes go, this one is kind of a banger, though it does introduce a lot of characters and plot details that are easily missable on a first watch. Code Geass is one of those shows where you really need to be paying 100% attention all the time. It's definitely not something you want to watch while scrolling on your phone, or you'll probably be confused. Hell, the only reason I wasn't missing things is because I take notes on literally every episode, and writing this script would probably be impossible for me without doing that. This episode also shows you just how big of bastards the Britannians are. Clovis literally has a Japanese ghetto exterminated to cover up a blunder, and Code Geass doesn't shy away from putting that violence directly on screen. It does not balk at showing literal children get shot. It also shows that a majority of the Britannian nobles just are straight up racist. I mean, one of the elite squads that serves Clovis is called the Purebloods. If it wasn't already incredibly obvious given how they refer to non-Britannians as numbers instead of their nationality. They do allow 11s and the other numbers to apply to become honorary Britannians, but that really gives off one of the good ones energy. Even though Lelouch has dispatched all of the soldiers that were detaining him, he isn't out of the fire yet, as a nightmare bursts through the wall and asks what the fuck is going on. Lelouch finds out the limitations of his Geass as he tries to use it on the pilot, a woman named Valletta, but it doesn't work because he needs direct eye contact. Lelouch tricks her into exiting the nightmare by saying he is the son of a duke, and to check his ID, and is able to Geass her into giving him her mech. He gets in touch with his friend from school Shirley and finds out through her that the Britannians are covering up the attack on the ghetto and there's nothing on the news. With this info, he decides that he can win against them, not through amazing piloting skills, but through a clever plan. Stealing Valletta's nightmare has given him access to its computer and friend or foe systems, so he can see all of the Britannian forces' movements and knows that they can't call for reinforcements. Lelouch contacts one of the terrorist pilots named Callan and tells her to follow his orders if she wants to win the battle, helping her escape a squad that's attacking her and turn the tide. He directs fighters to a train full of nightmares on standby. The leader of this resistance cell is a man named Ogi, who decides they should listen to this mysterious radio voice and is pretty much immediately rewarded for it. Lelouch is able to use his Sutherland's computer to pinpoint enemy nightmares, even having the resistance shoot through walls to take them out. Clovis starts freaking out when he sees he's losing troops, making a bad call and having his men break formation, even the men at his mobile base. We are introduced to Lloyd Asplund, an Earl of Britannia and scientist within the Nightmare Corps. He implores Prince Clovis to employ his experimental weapon, a white and gold mecha named the Lancelot, which he does when the resistance collapses a subway and kills a bunch of his men. Of course, the Lancelot is piloted then none other than the honorary Britannian Suzaku, a fact that takes Lelouch half the season to figure out. How did he survive being shot for insubordination? Well, the bullet was stopped by a now broken pocket watch that once belonged to his father, the former Prime Minister of Japan. The Lancelot starts taking out members of the resistance without taking a scratch due to its advanced energy shields, and while Lelouch tries to coach the resistance through the fight, the experimental mech is just too powerful. Lelouch actually has to flee his hideout when the Lancelot directly attacks, and is able to escape and make it to the military checkpoint and Clovis's forward operating base. Here, he uses the power of his Geass to get by the guards and hold the prince at gunpoint, revealing that he is Clovis's younger brother, the exiled 11th Prince of Britannia. He questions Clovis about the death of his mother, Lady Marianne, but Clovis just tells him to ask their brother and sister, Schneisel and Cornelia. That was apparently not the answer Lelouch was looking for, so he shoots Clovis in the head, and the show cuts to the next day at school. As it turns out, Callan is a member of Lelouch's class, and he immediately suspects that she was a pilot in the battle from her voice, and the fact that she misses a bunch of school because she's always sick and in the hospital. He uses his Geass on her and asks her why she's a member of the resistance. Callan answers that it is because she is proudly Japanese, and when he tries to use the Geass again to tell Callan not to talk about what happened in the Shinjuku ghetto, Lelouch finds that it doesn't work. His Geass power will only work on someone once, another downside along with having to have direct eye contact. Lelouch then goes home to his sister Nunnally, who is blind and in a wheelchair after being present for her mother's murder. That's pretty heavy. We learn that the two Britannians are being sheltered by the patrons of the academy, the Ashford family, which makes it really easy to have a ton of scenes at the school since he lives on the grounds. Lelouch is also part of the student council with his friends Shirley and Ribble, and also Millie Ashford, who knows his actual identity as a prince. There's also the mousy and quiet Nina, but we'll talk more about her later. Callan is being inducted into the student council, and this leads to her being covered in champagne and having to take a shower, of course. Don't worry, there's like a ton of Callan fan service in this show. Lelouch brings her clean clothes, and she takes the opportunity to grab him and hold him at knife point, becoming suspicious of him after he mentioned Shinjuku. But then her phone rings, and on the line is the voice from the radio, proving that it couldn't possibly be Lelouch. Of course, we see that he's used his Geass on an Ashford maid named Sayako to call and play a recorded message. But the episode cannot end with only one twist, and the TV announces that Prince Clovis has been killed, and the murder is being blamed on none other than honorary Britannian Suzaku Kurarugi. If it's one thing that the show really loves and is really good at, it's leaving you with a suspenseful ending. It makes Code Geass really easy to binge watch. Of course, as Lloyd points out, Suzaku didn't kill Clovis and there's no evidence, but it really doesn't matter when an ultra-nationalistic faction of your colonial military is currently taking charge. And the purebloods are the ultra-nationalists, so you know they're especially bad. They go as far as arresting General Bartley, the round, bald man that was close to Clovis and is secretly in charge of a program studying the Geass. Currently, the man everyone is rallying behind is the leader of the purebloods, Margrave Jeremiah, and he's willing to arrest anyone in his way, including all of the guards around Clovis at the time of his death, who all say they suffer memory loss during the incident. Callan is told to meet the radio voice at Tokyo Tower, and it's here we see that Lelouch can control mass amounts of people at the same time, and as long as his command isn't immediate, they seem to stay under his spell. Callan, Ogi, and two more resistance members named Kento and Toru enter a train car full of people influenced by the Geass. Sitting alone in the furthest car is a masked and cloaked figure, a man calling himself Zero. They recognize his voice and listen to him explain that their sporadic terrorist actions can't win against the Empire because their enemy is not simply the people, but the whole of Imperial Britannia itself. Zero gives his word to Ogi that under his leadership, he will prove that he can make the impossible possible, by saving Suzaku Kurarugi from execution. Also, if you're wondering where Lelouch got this costume, he's briefly shown receiving it from the old guy he was playing chess for in episode 1, who he Geassed into creating it for him. A big show is made of transporting Suzaku, but during the procession, a fake version of Prince Clovis's personal car approaches. Zero appears on the car's roof and announces who he is, the murderer of Prince Clovis. He then reveals that he has the canister from episode 1, which everyone thinks is poisoned gas, and he essentially uses it to take the entire parade hostage. He offers to hand over the canister in exchange for Suzaku. Zero also decides just to fuck with Jeremiah here, saying publicly that if he doesn't comply, he'll tell everybody about Orange. Which is literally just something he made up, but he knows that just a whiff of suspicion among the Britannians could be enough to mess with the Margrave's entire career. Finally, he uses his Geass through a little sliding door in his helmet to force Jeremiah to comply and release Suzaku. Zero tells Suzaku that the gas canister was empty and offers the young honorary Britannian to join his cause, but Suzaku's favorite belief is that the ends do not justify the means, and he willingly returns to stand trial. With Zero publicly taking credit for the murder of Prince Clovis, the Britannians send the second princess, Cornelia, to act as the new viceroy and hunt down the notorious terrorist. Also, with Zero's act at the parade, Suzaku is set free, having literally zero evidence, and the fact that he turned himself back in seems to have worked in his favor. He just happens to catch a falling, pink-haired girl that jumped out of a window because she says she's being chased. She tells Suzaku she's a Britannian visiting Area 11 on vacation, and his swag-ass fit must have impressed her because she asks him to escort her around Tokyo. These two are pulled into the consequences of Zero's actions when Jeremiah is cornered while in the Shinjuku ghetto by Britannian nightmares that think he's a traitor after his actions at the parade. Suzaku decides to intervene in the Lancelot, telling Lloyd that they should use the conflict to gather combat data. The pink-haired girl ends up running straight into the battle and demanding they all lay down their arms, revealing she's actually the third princess, Euphemia. Meanwhile, Lelouch returns home to find the green-haired woman who gave him the Geass just kinda chilling there. She says that her name is C2, though that's not her real name, and though Lelouch attempts to interrogate her, she really doesn't answer any of his questions and then goes to sleep in his bed. She also follows him to school, seeing that he Geassed a random student into marking the walls every day. Lelouch explains he did this to see the restrictions of the Geass and how long an order can last. He threatens to use the Geass on C2 if she gets out of hand, but she just tells him that she's immune to it, and we are then treated to an episode where Suzaku shows up to join Ashford Academy, which is apparently Euphemia's idea. There's this big chase sequence where a cat has Zero's helmet stuck on its head, and they end up almost falling off the school's clock tower trying to get it, resulting in Suzaku saving Lelouch's life and being appointed to the student council, which is a pretty big deal because he's not a true Britannian. The end of this episode really cements that Britannia is a might makes right shithole country by showing Emperor William give a speech about how actually equality is wrong, and if you aren't Britannian, you can just go fuck yourself. Viceroy Cornelia decides that she wants to recreate the chaos of the Shinjuku ghetto incident in order to draw Zero out. So she surrounds a resistance group called the Yamato Alliance. Lelouch decides to play into Cornelia's hand, believing he can take the chance to talk to or even kill Cornelia. But C2 threatens to shoot him in the leg. Their contract requires him to be alive and free after all, but she apparently hasn't learned the depth of Lelouch's conviction, and he pulls a gun and just threatens to kill himself if she doesn't let him go. Checkmate. Lelouch believes he can do the exact same thing he did in Shinjuku, using his Geass to get access to a Sutherland and coaching the rebels through the battle. However, the rebels don't listen to him and his plans begin to unravel, leaving him in a perilous position when Cornelia orders all her nightmare pilots to exit their cockpit and reveal their faces. Luckily, someone wearing Zero's outfit appears on a nearby rooftop, and Cornelia decides to be cautious and let them go, not wanting to fall into a trap. Lelouch finds that it was C2 in his costume and tells her that he realizes now he cannot topple Britannia by himself. He needs an army, a whole nation of people willing to stand up and fight against their overlords. The student council heads on a field trip and we see that Nina is like fucking terrified of just being near the Japanese ghetto. The show does kind of hint that she might have been subject to some form of violence in one of the ghettos, but they probably should have been a little bit more forthright about her past if they wanted 90% of the audience to not hate her. When Suzaku was admitted to Ashford, Nina was literally like, "What? Why?" And trust me, her character only gets worse from here. To be a bit fair to Nina, she kinda does call it because a terrorist group known as the JLF, or Japanese Liberation Front, takes over the hotel that their group is hanging out in, targeting the hotel because of some annual trade talks that are happening. They even set up this huge cannon in the tunnels below the building to blow away any approaching Britannian nightmares. Meanwhile, Zero meets with Ogi's group in their newly procured, super cool armored RV and announces that he is creating a group of knights. He even has some neat uniforms made up. Zero ends up interfering with the JLF's plans at the hotel, even reaching a deal with Princess Cornelia. Cornelia is tempted to kill Zero immediately, but he assures her that he can safely extract Princess Euphemia from the hotel, since she had been there for the trade talks. Zero is led in by the JLF, and comes face to face with the mission leader, Lieutenant Colonel Kusakabe. Zero calls Kusakabe's way of doing things stale, causing him to attack Zero for the insult, which then causes Zero to use the Geass to kill him. He then speaks with Euphemia, confirming that it was him who killed Clovis, simply because Clovis was the offspring of the Emperor. Also, there's this part where the student council is being held hostage in the hotel by the terrorists, and Nina like freaks out and is like, an 11, which causes Euphemia to stand up for her. And this like causes a snowballing infatuation with Euphemia that has some consequences. Zero does not kill Euphemia here, however, as his goal during this mission is to save all the hostages and declare the founding of the Black Knights, a gesture that he hopes will begin to win the minds of the common people to his cause. I guess Suzaku also technically helps as he takes out the cannon in the tunnel and a bunch of the support pillars as well. Zero sees the Lancelot perform this feat and remembers it from Shinjuku, though he still has no idea who the pilot could be. One of the first operations that we see the Black Knights undertake is a drug-busting operation in the slums. The ghettos are rife with a drug called Refrain, a substance that literally makes you relive memories as if you were there. I guess that puts a spotlight on how terrible things are under the Britannian Empire when people are quite literally living in the past. We see that Callan's mother is addicted to the substance and that Callan herself is a so-called half-breed, with a Britannian father and Japanese mother. Her stepmother is a total fucking bitch, by the way. I would not mind seeing that racist lady burn. Callan hates her stepmom, but might hate her own biological mother more, as she serves Callan's father as a housemaid. To Callan, this is like spitting on her Japanese heritage, and she does not understand why her mom would subject herself to that, not knowing that it is to protect and be near her own child. There's also a conversation between Lelouch and Callan about the role of 11s in society, and when Lelouch says he doesn't plan on ever doing anything about it, Callan slaps him in the face. We see the stark contrast of how Callan sees Lelouch and how she sees Zero without knowing that the layabout Britannian that she dislikes so heavily is actually the figurehead that she would give her life for. When the Black Knights bust another drug operation, Callan is shocked to discover her mother is there, reliving a happy time before the Britannians invaded and her brother died. A police nightmare is seen guarding the drug facility, which Zero claims is proof of a corrupt system that must be completely destroyed. On top of that, Callan's mom is given a 20-year prison sentence for drug use, which is fucking bonkers. Overall, a great episode that establishes character ideologies and why they do what they do. There's also the first big hint at how Lelouch and Suzaku are eventually going to butt heads as they argue over Zero's methods, with Suzaku saying that if Zero really wanted to make a difference, he would have joined the police. Dude, I literally legitimately rolled my eyes here, and this started my kind of deep dislike for Suzaku. To be clear, I don't dislike him as a character. I think he's pretty well written all in all, especially when you learn why he believes the things he does. But God, I just want to slap him. The Black Knights receive a shipment from the Big Shot rebels based in Kyoto that includes a bunch of nightmares and a special unit, a Japanese-made mech called the Gurren Mark II. The Kyoto group is the head of the JLF, but they don't seem to harbor any sort of resentment towards the Black Knights for the hotel incident. In fact, shipping them a bunch of nightmares seems to be a sort of test for the group. This episode is also where the blonde-haired TV reporter, Detard Reed, applies to join the Black Knights after being demoted for broadcasting Zero's rise to power. Also, YouTube, please don't demonetize me for his name. I know what it sounds like, and I definitely thought it would be pronounced Dieter, but it is not in the dub. Reed becomes an instrumental member in the organization with his broadcasting know-how and general strategic savviness, but at first he seems more than a little sus. You gotta give it to the guy though, he fucking loves Zero and loves sticking it to Britannia just because he finds it so entertaining. The Black Knights receive intelligence that Cornelia is going to attack the JLF at Narita, a mountain community and major rebel base. Lelouch decides to intervene, using his Geass to sneak his troops behind the JLF's defensive line. He plans on using a big energy weapon to cause a rock slide, cutting the Britannian troops in half and isolating Cornelia from any backup. Maybe the Viceroy shouldn't personally lead the charge, you know? At least her nightmare is really cool looking. The landslide also damages a huge chunk of the city at the base of the mountain, and this is the first time that Zero and the Black Knights have to decide what is acceptable collateral damage. Jeremiah attempts to attack Zero before he can make it to Cornelia, but Lelouch refuses to fight and keeps calling him Orange Boy. Callan and the Gurren end up taking on Jeremiah, and the custom mech is more powerful and faster than his Glasgow. Oh, and it also has this energy weapon that basically microwaves people inside their cockpit. It's pretty metal. Jeremiah passes out, but his auto-eject goes off before he dies, flinging him off alone into the devastated mountainside. Cornelia finds herself between a rock and a hard place, with the Black Knights closing in on her remaining forces, and Kyoshiro Todo, one of the JLF's most prestigious fighters, flanking her from behind. When Zero finally arrives to confront Cornelia, making his way through the chaos of the battlefield, it seems that he has her right where he wants her. Unfortunately for Zero, the Lancelot arrives just in time to save the Viceroy. The Gurren and Lancelot seem almost evenly matched until it gets kicked off a ledge and is damaged. Zero realizes that the Black Knights cannot win a war of attrition against the remaining Britannian forces and calls for a retreat, but Suzaku in the Lancelot chases him down and destroys his burai. Before Suzaku can kill or capture Zero, C2 shows up and tells him to stop. She places a hand on the Lancelot, and it shows Suzaku a terrifying vision where he sees his father and begins to go berserk. When Zero touches her arm, he's also shown a vision of C2's apparent past when she was persecuted for being a witch. Lelouch takes C2 into a cave on the mountain. She was wounded by shrapnel, and he takes some of her blood on a cloth to have analyzed later. He also sees that she heals incredibly fast, which makes sense given the fact that she survived being shot directly in the head back in episode 1. While C2 is sleeping, Lelouch learns her true name from her mumbling, though the audience does not get to hear it. When she wakes up, he thanks her for saving his life, and she asks him to thank her using her true name, and their bond grows deeper. With Zero and the Black Knight's actions at Narita bloodying the nose of the Britannian forces, they get invited to Kyoto to meet the resistance leader. Of course, leading a double life is time-consuming, and of course the budding romance between Lelouch and Shirley will have to take more than a back seat. It's not even really a budding romance, honestly. Shirley obviously likes Lelouch, but his feelings are more complicated and he hasn't really had time to think about it. I like that you kind of get the feeling that Lelouch doesn't really know if he likes her or not, and just pushes any of those feelings away due to the time-consuming nature of leading a rebel group. That, and it becomes more and more apparent as the first season goes on that the Lelouch that Shirley falls for isn't the real Lelouch at all, simply a mask that he wears when he isn't taking the mantle of Zero. Even so, Shirley invites Lelouch to see a concert, but something happens that not only interrupts their plans, but begins to drive them apart. While Zero and the Black Knights Inner Circle head to Kyoto, Shirley is seen heading to Narita on a train where she learns her father was killed when the landslide damaged the city. Meanwhile, while Zero heads to the meeting with the leader of the JLF, a man named Taizo Kirihara, he pulls a little trick on them. He has C2 take his place in the mask as Lelouch knows that they'll probably force Zero to reveal their identity, and wouldn't you know it, he's right. Lelouch is able to turn the tables on the delegation with his own nightmare, revealing that he knows that Taizo uses his immense wealth and connections within the Sakuradite mining operation to work as a double agent within the colonial government. Zero tells Taizo that he himself is not Japanese, but he wants to destroy Britannia, and then agrees to show the old rebel his face. Lelouch unmasks himself to Taizo, who he apparently knew from his youth, which causes the old man to burst out with laughter. While the rest of the Black Knights can't see Zero's face, Taizo tells Ogi that Zero is a true enemy of Britannia and that they should trust him. In fact, he's willing to give the Black Knights his full financial backing as long as they're following Zero. I love that he's like, yeah, no, this guy hates Britannia, you don't gotta worry about him. When they return from Kyoto, Lelouch has to run off to tell Shirley that he apologizes for being late to the concert. But instead, she tells him about her father and asks why Zero would kill him. Shirley then kisses Lelouch. Mixed messages out the wazoo in here, man. Talk about a trauma response. Valletta, the nightmare pilot that served under Jeremiah, is also there and happens to notice that Shirley has a picture of Lelouch and begins to put two and two together, thinking that Lelouch may have some connection to the Black Knights. The student council all attend Shirley's father's funeral, and she appears to be taking the death incredibly well. Suzaku continues to annoy me here by saying that he hates Zero because he never gets his hands dirty and relies on others to do his work for him. Like, I can understand that Suzaku hates Zero and disagrees with his methods on a fundamental level, but that just kinda sounds ignorant when Zero is constantly on the front lines of his own battles, piloting a mech, and personally killed Prince Clovis. Also, I have to mention this at some point, so I may as well do it now. There is so much Pizza Hut in this show. Pizza Hut gave a bunch of money to the production, so it's a bona fide product placement, and they ain't shy about it. I mean, C2 has a stuffed Hut mascot named Cheese Coon. It's just so weird to see the Pizza Hut logo all over the place in a show about genocides, violent rebellion, and retribution. Violent retribution is what happened the last time I ate Pizza Hut. The worst part is, if you watch the DVD or Blu-ray version of the show, they remove all the product placement. Not allowed, Code Geass. You made your Pizza Hut bed and you lay in it, goddammit. Cornelia decides to send Marines to attack the JLF's General Katase, and Todo and his 4 holy swords cannot make it to defend them in time. So Zero commands the Black Knights to destroy Cornelia's forces and save the remnants of the Japanese Liberation Front. But nothing is ever that straightforward in Code Geass, and Zero has a secret plan in mind. The JLF are making their last stand aboard a ship loaded up with liquid sakuradite, which means that the Britannians can't just sink them or they'll cause a huge explosion. Zero knows that the JLF will never hold out against the Imperial Marines in their nightmares, so he enacts his secret plan, blowing up an underwater mine once the Britannians have closed in. The mine ignites the sakuradite and blows up the ship along with the remnants of the JLF and any Britannians that were boarding. Zero is willing to use the lives of all those men as bait to spring a surprise attack on Cornelia, though he tells his own men that the JLF sprung a suicide attack. Zero almost completes his goal of killing Cornelia, but stops at the last second when he sees Shirley just standing there in the background. Valletta had contacted her and just straight up told her that she suspects Lelouch is heavily involved with the Black Knights, so Shirley tailed Lelouch to the battle to find out the truth, also being tailed herself by Valletta in secret. This pause in the fight allows Suzaku and the Lancelot to destroy Zero's nightmare, though his cockpit is saved by Callan's intervention. Shirley makes her way to the wreck and an unconscious Zero, and the episode ends as she holds him at gunpoint with his own pistol. Lelouch wakes up to find his gun missing and a nearby puddle of blood. He immediately suspects that Shirley could have been the one to take his weapon, and figures whoever did take it saw his face. C2 has to use Zero's mask to give orders to the Black Knights because he is so distracted, and he only gets more freaked out when he calls Suzaku and finds out that Shirley was absent from school that day. He and C2 search Shirley's dorm room and find a bunch of pictures of him. Kinda creepy. They also find a train schedule with Narita circled and figure that Shirley took off there, causing them to go themselves. Shirley is confronted by this weird dude with a visor that tells her that Lelouch is without a doubt Zero, and she flashes back to herself and Valletta discovering that fact. Valletta decided that they should execute Lelouch right there on the spot, causing Shirley to shoot her to protect him. The visor guy, a man named Mao, begins to toy with Shirley, telling her that she shot Valletta and killed her simply because she's evil. He then calls Lelouch on Shirley's phone to taunt him, and we see that Mao is apparently another holder of the power of Geass. Lelouch ends up confronting Mao, who forces Lelouch to play against him in chess. Lelouch finds Mao to be an exceedingly difficult opponent, and he reveals that not only does he have the Geass power of mind reading, but he also knows C2. It all comes to a head when Shirley holds both Lelouch and Mao at gunpoint, with Mao using his mind reading to know exactly what to say to manipulate her. She shoots at Lelouch, causing all the pictures to fall out of his pocket, but also at Mao, causing him to basically say, "Fuck this noise," and leave. Mao sees C2 and gets really excited like a puppy seeing its owner come home, and when he removes his headphones, we hear that he is just constantly listening to a medley of positive affirmations recorded by her. Lelouch embraces Shirley, who's beside herself with grief at the thought that she killed Valletta, and that she almost shot him. He tells her that any sin that she has committed is his responsibility, and ultimately he uses his Geass to make Shirley forget. Not only about the fact that he's Zero, but forget their friendship in its entirety. I mean, Lelouch probably could have just like made her forget that he's Zero, or just even the last couple of days, but he's literally the most dramatic person in Japan, and also has a need to punish himself for what happened to her. He also believes that this will keep her safe if anyone actually learns his identity and decides to target his friends, but they're still on the student council together, so I feel like this would just make things more complicated. C2 explains Mao's Geass. He's able to read anyone's mind for up to 500 meters, and that he was her contract 11 years ago. His biggest weakness is that he actually cannot turn off his Geass power, and it has driven him insane. She tells Lelouch that the more you use a Geass, the more powerful it becomes, and it can consume the user if they don't have the will to wield it. Lelouch straight up calls C2 a monster and says that everything bad that has happened up to that point is actually her fault, which is pretty harsh and is kind of casting blame for Shirley's situation on the wrong person, and it seems like a way for Lelouch to deflect. However, C2 did form a contract with Mao 11 years ago when he was just a child, so she's definitely no angel. Eventually, Mao calls Lelouch and asks to talk to C2. After their brief conversation, she seems to betray Lelouch and walk out on him. He even tries to use his Geass to make her stay, but of course it does not work on her. It's pretty obvious that C2 is doing this because she feels the need to hunt down Mao alone and is being threatened, and ends up meeting him at the shutdown amusement park, Clovis Land. Mao is obsessed with C2, mostly because she's the only person whose mind he can't read. She pulls a gun on him, but Mao is surprisingly faster and shoots her a bunch of times, knowing that she cannot die. They show how utterly insane Mao is when he reveals his plan is to live with C2 in a nice little cottage in Australia. The only catch is that he needs to smuggle her on the plane, and he's gonna cut her into pieces with a chainsaw and stuff her in his luggage. The dude is serious too. I mean, he brought the chainsaw. Before Mao can get to the sawing, Lelouch appears on a huge screen in the park after hacking into the system. He tells Mao that C2 belongs to him, even letting it drop that he knows her true name, something that the mind reader was never able to learn. He also sort of implies that he's slept with her just to make Mao freak out, so good thing that Lelouch records every single phone call he gets and was able to figure out that Mao was actually threatening to tell the cops that Lelouch was Zero unless she came to meet him. Mao starts flipping out and shooting the screen, and then his mind becomes flooded with voices as a bunch of Geassed police officers show up. Lelouch, dressed as a cop, tells Mao that because he always resorts to reading minds, he has no cunning. The police then absolutely blow Mao away in a hail of gunfire. Somehow the cops miss all of Mao's vitals because he shows up in the next episode covered in bandages to get his revenge by kidnapping Nunnally. And he says it's thanks to Britannian medical science that he survived. So I guess they have good insurance. I like this episode because it forces Lelouch and Suzaku to team up since C2 has been sent away as an envoy to the Chinese Federation. Mao takes Nunnally to these waterways beneath the school, and when Lelouch and Suzaku go to rescue her, they come across a machine gun hooked up to a security camera. I'm not sure if Mao was supposed to have set this up, or if the school just really doesn't want students going down there. Apparently Suzaku's also superhuman because he can run on walls fast enough to dodge bullets and kicks the turret so hard that it breaks. Then when they finally find Nunnally, she's sitting under a bomb swinging on a pendulum, and if the pendulum becomes unbalanced, the bomb will go off and kill her. So this episode is just kind of bananas. Lelouch decides to trust Suzaku with helping Nunnally get safe from the bomb. Suzaku has been growing close to the pair once again, and Lelouch has been wrestling with the fact that his actions as Zero will probably mean that he'll have to separate himself from his sister. Nunnally is literally the most important thing in Lelouch's life and the person that he cares about the most. Pretty much anytime Lelouch thinks about doing something morally dubious as Zero, he ends up convincing himself by thinking of bringing about a better future for his sister. So he comes up with the idea of tasking Suzaku with looking after her once he becomes too embroiled in conflict. It's a nice detail that shows Lelouch really does trust Suzaku, even though he philosophically disagrees with him about how to change Britannia. It also gives me a tense feeling because as the audience, we know Suzaku being the pilot of the Lancelot and Lelouch being Zero means they are destined to come to a head at some point. Lelouch faces Mao in a deadly chess game in the school's clock tower. For once, he can't beat his opponent, and during the game, Mao attempts to find out if Lelouch and Suzaku had a plan to save Nunnally, but can't read any information. When Lelouch loses, he begs Mao not to detonate the bomb, but he does it anyway. However, instead of a sister-killing explosion, he gets Suzaku flying through the window and beating the shit out of him. Lelouch reveals he didn't know Suzaku's plan because he used his Geass on himself to forget the details. Suzaku attempts to restrain and arrest Mao, but Mao reads his mind and reveals Suzaku's ultimate secret. During the war between Japan and Britannia, Suzaku's father wanted to fight the Empire until the end. But Suzaku, who was 10 at the time, killed his dad in order to stop the war. The information was then covered up so that Suzaku wouldn't take the blame. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have to live with that gigantic lie. In retribution, Lelouch commands Mao to never speak again, activating his Geass and sentencing him to a lifetime of unintelligible gurgling. Luckily for Mao, his life won't be very long because C2 walks in and just sort of kills him. I guess Mao was definitely C2's responsibility, so it's nice to see her taking care of it. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the way that Suzaku actually frees Nunnally. He just spin kicks the wires on the bomb, and he's so accurate and cool that the bomb doesn't go off. Suzaku is pretty much superhuman, which is something that the show doesn't really put a spotlight on, but he does pull off a couple of insane feats. While Lelouch and C2 are off dealing with Mao, Ogi begins to become a little suspicious of Zero. I suppose it's fair that you might want to know the identity of the man you're following, especially with Ogi being in the inner circle. Detard even throws a little gas on that fire when he asks Ogi what he would do if he found out that Zero was responsible for the Sakuradite detonation during the battle between the Britannian Marines and the JLF. While Ogi becomes more suspicious, he also happens upon a wounded Valletta after that battle. Shirley did not kill her, but did critically wound her and give her amnesia, so she falls into Ogi's care as he nurses her back to health. Of course, as Ogi watches over her, a romance between them begins to form. Zero and Detard come up with a new way to organize the Black Knights as their numbers and funding begin to swell. They are formed into a network of tiered operators that make up different cells throughout Japan, with each tier having access to different information to ensure that they can't give away the entire operation if captured. Ogi meets with the Four Holy Swords of the former JLF, and they tell him that Todo has been captured. Zero gives the go-ahead for the Black Knights to go and break him out. They also receive new equipment for the Gurren from a woman named Rakshata. Rakshata is an Indian scientist who quickly becomes the head of the Black Knights Research and Development Program, not to mention being a rival in the world of technical know-how to Lloyd. Rakshata is a huge reason that the Black Knights become as powerful as they do, and I mean, she gets them a fucking submarine at one point. The Four Holy Swords attack the prison holding Todo in some new models called Gekas, and we see the person that's been chosen to carry out Todo's execution is Suzaku. Suzaku is actually close to Todo. A flashback reveals that he was Suzaku's mentor during his youth. Zero and Callan break into the prison under the cover of battle, and Zero has to give a little pep talk to Todo to get him out of his funk. Zero tells him that he has a responsibility as a renowned warrior to keep fighting, and officially recruits Todo and the Four Holy Swords into the Black Knights. When the Lancelot inevitably shows up, Zero coaches Todo and the Four Holy Swords into fighting it. After seeing the Golden Nightmare fight so many battles, Zero has its fighting style down to a T. Todo cuts the cockpit of the Lancelot open, finally revealing that its pilot is Suzaku, which shocks Lelouch. In fact, it actually makes him go a little crazy as he laughs maniacally to himself. Zero calls for a retreat as he sees more soldiers arriving, but his ultimate goal here has been achieved, recruiting Todo as a tactician and soldier of the Black Knights. Euphemia has been given a binder full of men and women and told to choose one to be her personal knight. Essentially, shit is getting so violent that she needs a bodyguard that she can trust over everyone else. After the televised battle at the prison, all the nobles are making fun of Suzaku, so she pisses them all off by choosing him to be her knight. Plus, it really only makes sense with how their relationship is evolving, with mutual attraction on both sides. With the restructuring of the Black Knights complete, a bunch of the Inner Circle get fun new titles. Todo is head of military affairs, Detard runs public relations and espionage, Rakshata is the head of technical development, and Ogi is named deputy commander. It does sort of seem like Ogi just sort of falls into the role because he's just kind of there. Callan is also named the head of Zero Squad, an elite guard unit tasked with protecting Zero. We get a short scene with Emperor Charles constructing something he calls the Thought Elevator, and he drops some information that he believes his son, Prince Schneisel, may be plotting against him, which is all info we really don't need until Season 2. Suzaku and Euphemia head to the island of Kamijima to meet a Britannian VIP, the aforementioned Prince Schneisel. It's really hard to say Prince Schneisel without sounding like I'm drunk and slurring, so. Of course, the Black Knights are not far behind in their submarine, with Zero giving Todo the go-ahead to attack the Britannian base. I love the interaction between Zero and Detard here, where Zero tells him not to overstep his bounds within the Black Knights. Detard keeps suggesting that they just assassinate Suzaku, and even tells Callan to kill him, which she was going to do in front of everybody, by the way. That girl has some massive swinging balls, like being willing to just shank him right at school. Suzaku probably would have spin kicked her and turned her into atoms or something anyway. So as the battle on Kamijima unfolds, the Black Knights draw the Lancelot into a trap set by Rakshata that fries it and forces it to stand in one spot. Zero tries to talk to Suzaku once again, but Suzaku just parrots his lines about how peace brought through contemptible means isn't worth it. Zero retorts that the current peace that they're enjoying was brought about through contemptible means when Suzaku killed his own father. While they argue, Suzaku gets a transmission telling him to hold Zero there and that they're going to target his location with missiles. So all of Suzaku's talk about changing Britannia from the inside and doing things the right way would pretty much amount to nothing, as he's willing to be killed by friendly fire to take Zero out. And it looks like that's exactly what's about to happen, with Prince Schneisel himself entering the battlefield in his huge airship, the Avalon, and firing a beam of energy at the Lancelot. Everyone wakes up sometime later on the island with no memory of what happened. Lelouch reveals his identity to Euphemia, who had already figured it out anyway. Meanwhile, Suzaku finds Callan bathing in the woods and she tries to kill him, but he gets the better of her and takes her prisoner. Yuffie tells Lelouch that the person he should ask about his mother's murder is their sister Cornelia, as it was her that investigated the killing. That night, both groups see a light on the island emitted by a camp set up by Lloyd and Prince Schneisel, who are studying some ancient ruins using a nightmare called the Gawain. General Bartley is also there and believes that the real reason that Britannia invades other countries is to claim these types of ruins that are obviously connected to the power of the Geass. The two groups run into each other, but before they can kill one another, the ground lights up with the symbol of the Geass and collapses, dumping them into some ruins. Zero and Callan get into the Gawain and fly away. And the Gawain can fly, which is pretty cool. It has two energy weapons on it that are unfinished. As Zero and Callan escape the island, Zero reveals that he used the Geass on Suzaku to command him to live. Suzaku dodged the energy beam at the last second and is arrested for not following orders. And in a patented Code Geass twist double ending, Cornelia gets word that Japan is under attack. She assumes it's the Chinese Federation, but the landing craft and vehicles all bear the Japanese flag. The exiled remnants of the old Japanese government attacks and takes control of Fukuoka base. Zero tells the Black Knights that he has decided not to work with the old government headed by the politician Matsushi Sawasaki. He says that they are a selfish organization that fled the country to hide in exile in the Chinese Federation, leaving their people to suffer at the hands of the Britannian Empire. When his inner circle asks what the objective of the Black Knights truly is, Zero reveals that it is to found an independent country, the United States of Japan. To that end, Zero believes that public opinion will skyrocket if the Black Knights are seen assisting in the battle against the exiled government. Zero and C2, piloting the completed Gawain, actually team up with Suzaku and the Lancelot in order to defeat the Federation. Even though Suzaku is hesitant to accept the help, he's also renounced his knighthood after his actions in the prior battle. But after Euphemia contacts him, he gets his mojo back because she confesses her love to him. Euphemia comes to this revelation when she runs into Nina at an art museum, and the two have a conversation about how they all hate themselves for being weak. Nina really simps for Euphemia here too, calling her a goddess. What an orbiter. The bombastic battle is followed up by a school festival episode where Suzaku is using a nightmare frame owned by the school to cook the world's largest pizza. All the characters end up running into each other at the festival, including Ogi and Valletta. Ogi actually considers drugging Valletta with Refrain because he thinks she knows who Zero is. Kind of a fucked up thing to even consider, Ogi. This episode isn't just a bit of school festival filler though, as it peppers in some important information, like Zero and Detard chatting about having agents occupy certain areas for a big upcoming operation. We're also shown glimpses of Jeremiah's body floating in a tube with General Bartley's science team doing experiments on him. Schneisel has released Bartley after he was arrested for his incompetence surrounding Clovis's death, but Schneisel is constantly scheming and moving all of his pieces into place. Yuffie ends up going to the festival in order to speak with Lelouch and Nunnally, who she hasn't seen in years. She promises to keep their identity a secret, and tells Lelouch that she's working on some plan to make Britannia better. Of course, the princess's cover is blown and causes an uproar within the crowd, but she's saved by Suzaku piloting the school's Ganymede. Euphemia takes the attention as her chance to announce her new plan, a special administrative zone near Mount Fuji where 11s will be able to call themselves Japanese, as well as having more rights. This shocks everyone, including Lelouch, who's pissed because he figures she's only doing it to stop his plans as Zero. Nina is also out of her mind over it because she's so racist against the Japanese that the thought of them having rights breaks her brain. She's also beside herself trying to figure out why the target of her admirations wouldn't just be as racist as she is. Nina kind of fucking sucks. Euphemia invites important people from all around Area 11 to the opening of the special zone, including Taizo and even Zero. Zero arrives in the Gawain, and everyone is pretty shocked that he would actually come. There's some weird stuff going on with Suzaku. He can see that C2 is in the cockpit of the Gawain by sensing her energy, and after Zero and Euphemia go to have a private conversation, Suzaku passes out just from touching C2's arm. Zero tells Yuffie that he's going to ruin her special zone by having her shoot him with a pistol and making it look like it was all a trap, but Euphemia changes his mind, convincing him that she really does have the best interest of the people in mind by saying that she has renounced her claim to the imperial throne. Euphemia asks Zero how he would have made her shoot him, and he says that he has a way of making people obey what he says. And then he says, even if I ordered you to kill all the Japanese, you couldn't refuse. And that is when his Geass chooses to malfunction, which is something that's already happened once, and also something that C2 warned him about. This causes the princess to go absolutely fucking nuts and run out onto the stage proclaiming in front of everyone that all the Japanese citizens need to die. God damn it, Lelouch, you had to use the worst possible thing as an example, huh? You couldn't just say something like, you'll never eat spaghetti again. Lelouch is the most dramatic person on planet Earth, and it consistently gets him in trouble, but then I guess having a flair for drama is what made him such a charismatic leader so far. The crazed princess orders the soldiers to shoot the unarmed civilians, going as far as shooting Dalton when he questions her orders. Her soldiers are like, well, alright then, and just start mowing down the crowds. The Black Knights have been camped in the surrounding hills waiting for Zero's signal, and they move in to engage the Britannians and save the fleeing innocents. The scenes of crazed Yuffie just firing a machine gun at helpless people are so insane. I think this episode actually made me gasp the first time I saw it. Detard and Rakshata are broadcasting Yuffie's bloodlust to an international audience, and as Zero exits the stadium, he runs into Dalton and Geasses him with an order that we are not privy to as the audience. Lelouch also finds that he cannot turn off his Geass, much like what happened to Mao. Yuffie actually boards a nightmare frame to get some personal killing done and ends up in a battle with Callan before Lelouch arrives in the Gawain to cut her down. Lelouch knows that he cannot let Euphemia continue to live in this state, so he shoots her just as Suzaku arrives to watch. Suzaku tries to kill Zero, but C2 is in the way, so he just takes Euphemia and flies back to the Avalon. Zero takes this as an opportunity to exert his power over Taizo, saying that his plan of working with the Britannians on the special zone was weak, and that he alone should have control over Kyoto's resources. Also present is Kaguya Sumeragi, one of the young leaders of the 6 houses of Kyoto. I just figured I'd mention her because she backs Zero and the Black Knights from here on, but she doesn't do much else in Season 1, besides telling Zero she wants to marry him when he takes over Japan. She's looking out for herself, I guess. Zero gives a speech saying the events of the Special Zone are proof that Britannia is performing a genocide. He inspires the people to rise up and announces that he will found the United States of Japan, an independent nation that will take the fight to Britannia. People rise up and fight all throughout Area 11, with the Black Knights amassing a huge force to assault Tokyo. While Euphemia holds on long enough to make it back to the Avalon, she doesn't have long to live. She has no memory of what happened thanks to the Geass, and asks Suzaku if the special zone made everyone happy. He cannot bring himself to tell her the truth, choosing to comfort her until she dies. As Zero and his army approach Tokyo, he gives the Britannians an ultimatum. They have until midnight to surrender or die. He then triggers a signal to a bunch of workers within the settlement that he has Geassed over the course of the series. All that testing of how complicated a task can be and how long the Geass will last ultimately leads to all these sleeper agents triggering a collapse of the Tokyo settlement. This also triggers Lelouch to laugh maniacally, one of his favorite pastimes. He then has the commanders of the Black Knights take over Ashford Academy as their forward operating base, giving explicit instructions not to hurt any of the students. We get a look at a meeting with the royal family of Britannia, and it appears that Schneisel is probably the most likely to take the throne, even though he is the second in line. He takes charge over his brother, first Prince Odysseus, who really doesn't look like he knows what he should be doing during a crisis. Suzaku won't sit idly by, despite not being given an order to defend the government building, and punches Lloyd in the face to take the Lancelot's keys. Suzaku's then going berserk, killing a bunch of Black Knight mechs, spurred on by his newfound knowledge of the Geass. He was visited by a person named V2, who, much like C2, is connected to the Geass's power and spilled the magical beans. This isn't the only appearance that V2 makes at the tail end of the show here, as he also appears to Nunnally in order to kidnap her. Callan engages Suzaku, which results in both the Lancelot and Gurren having their arms blown off. Before Suzaku can kill Callan, Zero shows up and saves her life in the Gawain, and then Suzaku is once again caught in a trap set by Rakshata, which frees Zero up to go and attack the government building directly. During the battle and unrest, Valletta ends up getting attacked in Ogi's apartment, and it results in her getting her memories back. She tries sneaking into Ashford Academy knowing that Lelouch is Zero, but is caught and brought to Ogi. Instead of taking pity on the rebel leader, Valletta says she's disgusted that she had feelings for an 11 during her amnesia, and then she shoots him. Wow man, what a breakup. Valletta then escapes Ashford, getting away from Ogi's men in the confusion. When Zero finally confronts Viceroy Cornelia, she actually almost takes him out, but Dalton appears and fulfills his Geass instructions by shooting Cornelia and disabling her nightmare. And for his effort, Zero then blows him up with the Gawain's Hadron cannons. Before Cornelia dies, Zero interrogates her about Lady Marion's murder, and she says that it was Marion herself who ordered her personal guard to leave during the incident. And then Prince Schneisel personally transported her body. C2 interrupts, telling Lelouch that Nunnally has been stolen away, but he doesn't really believe her. I think at this point he should probably just take her word for it. I mean, are psychic powers really all that unbelievable? C2 and Lelouch can't recover Cornelia's body because Jeremiah has broken out of containment and shows up going absolutely nuts in a giant mech. The mere mention of Zero sets him into a rage. Zero ends up dropping a building on Jeremiah to get away, and calls Nunnally only to get no answer. He and C2 then head to Kamijima Island, telling Toto that he's in charge of the Black Knights now. With their leader gone, the Knights' morale begins to waver, especially when the Avalon shows up. Suzaku is freed from the trap and told to follow Zero to Kamijima Island by a dying Cornelia. Yeah, also Nina has been going even more crazy since Euphemia was killed and apparently rigged a Sakuradite bomb to the school's Ganymede. I don't know where she got the materials for that, but it brings the fighting around Ashford to a standstill as she just threatens to kill everybody. Lelouch and C2 arrive at the island and almost immediately trigger a trap that makes Lelouch see into C2's past. We see that she was alive during World War I and even longer before that, and C2 laments the fact that because of her long life, she has always been alone. Lelouch comforts her, saying that he's there for her, he understands her, and if she's a witch, then he's a demon. Jeremiah appears and interrupts their heartfelt moments, so C2 kisses Lelouch, telling him to go save Nunnally while she holds off Orange Boy. The fight between C2 and Jeremiah is pretty neat too, and she ends up grappling onto him and slamming both mechs directly into the ocean. Lelouch enters the island cave and makes for the huge door of the ruin, where he's confronted by Suzaku. Suzaku reveals he knows about the Geass and then shoots off Zero's helmet. This makes Callan, who had followed Zero to the island under Toto's orders, collapse in shock. Callan feels betrayed that the layabout Britannian from school that she really doesn't like is actually the leader she looks up to, and begins to question whether her loyalty to Zero was due to her own feelings or due to his Geass power. Suzaku is determined not to let Lelouch do what he wants, even when the other reveals that he has a bomb strapped to his chest. Both Lelouch and Suzaku fire their weapons at each other as the scene cuts to black. Season 1 of Code Geass comes to a shocking and abrupt end. And that, everyone, was Season 1 of Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. As I said before, this was the first time I've watched through the series, and wow, what a first season it was. I think that the show does have a small hurdle at the beginning where there's a lot of setup and school-related stuff, but once the season begins to pick up steam, it never really slows down. Of course, the thing that the show is probably best at is leaving you with a twist at the end of almost every episode, and that makes the show very easy to binge watch. Of course, it ultimately leaves you on a huge cliffhanger, but that can only be solved by watching the second season, so that's what we're gonna do. Coming up next in early February will be my thoughts on Gundam Thunderbolt, and after that we will most likely be looking at Season 2 of Code Geass. So keep an eye out for that. If you made it this far in the video, I want to thank you for sticking with me, and I will see you all again very soon. Hello everybody and welcome to today's end card. I want to start out, as always, by thanking the channel members, and I actually went through and made sure to write down the actual screen name and everything, because YouTube's things started showing us the username instead of their display name, so I've got that all sorted out, so the list should be correct. Apologize if I left anyone out by accident last time on the Gundam Origin video. But thank you for the channel members, aka Batosai, Azure Windress, Brian Sanchez, Chris Goodnow, Daniel Johnson, Dane O'Connor, Grim07, Harmonious, Jason Carpenter, Jessica Solberg, Jay Lamb, Joe Castellanos, Joe Cavazos, Johnny G, Canto 20, McLean Nugent, Mackenzie Cunning, MB, Michael Lewis, Rother the Paladin, The Crawl, Trey Hardy, The Twisted Mentat, Video Gamer 75, Zappa Slave, and Zach Jones. And thank you all so much for throwing me a couple of bucks per month. It means the world to me, especially with the world being so fucking insane right now. I know I started this video off pretty pissed off. I have to say I'm kind of in a state of being kind of pissed off all the time now, which is not a wonderful way to live, but what are you gonna do? Anyway, if you want to support me in any other way, be sure to give the video a like and whatnot. Leave a comment if you would, and if you'd like to see some other stuff I've done, there is a gaming channel, a Let's Play channel, in fact. And right now, we just finished up Paper Mario a couple weeks ago, which I had never played through to the end of Paper Mario, but it was really good. And now we're doing another PlayStation 1 classic, The Legend of Dragoon, as well as finishing up the Gears of War original trilogy. That will be done probably sometime next week. That one will be wrapping up, but I expect Legend of Dragoon to last probably through the spring. I'm doing 40-minute episodes for it, but it is a 50-hour-ish game, and I'm doing it blind, so I've never played through before. But it's been a really good time. People have really been liking the chill vibe of the Legend of Dragoon videos, so I do want to thank them as well for anyone who comments on that channel. It means a lot. to me personally. So yeah, as far as content on this channel, I'm gonna start watching Code Geass R2 next, so expect a video on that, probably the end of February would be my guess. But coming up next for the channel is going to be a review on the movie versions of Gundam Thunderbolt, so keep an eye out for that. That will be out within the next 1 or 2 weeks because it's not much content comparatively to something like Code Geass. So thank you guys for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today. I hope that the video was able to make you feel a little bit better if you're feeling down. And hey, I will see you again really soon. Have a good night.